Welcome back, guys. Before we start, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family also. Can you please tell me from where you're watching? Thanks. So let me tell you about something that happened last fall. It still gives me goosebumps whenever I think about it. My name's Ellie, and I was 15 when this all went down. My cousin Jonah and I moved with our grandparents to this really old farmhouse just outside of a town called Briar Glen. This place is way out there, like, we're talking no neighbors in sight, dirt road kind of isolated. It's the kind of house where everything creaks and the wind always sounds like it's whispering something you don't want to hear. The year was 1997. My parents had gone overseas for work, and they figured I'd be safer and happier with Grandma and Grandpa for a while. Jonah, who's a year older than me, had already been living with them, so it made sense. They were super sweet, but kinda old-fashioned. No internet, no cable, no cell service, just landlines and silence. The house itself looked like it had been pulled straight out of a ghost story. 2 stories tall, wooden siding with faded green paint, shutters hanging crooked, and this huge front porch with a swing that never stopped moving, even when there wasn't wind. The backyard had a rotting barn and an old well we were told never to mess with. Ever. Now, most of the time, the place felt quiet in that peaceful, boring way. But sometimes, especially in the evenings, it felt different. Like the air got thicker. Like the house was watching you. Anyway, this weird thing happened on a Saturday. Grandma and Grandpa had gone to visit some friends in a town about an hour away, and they weren't going to be back until late. Jonah had pulled an all-nighter, gaming or whatever, and said he was crashing hard, so he locked himself in his room and told me, "Don't wake me up unless the house is on fire." So it was just me, our dog Beans, he's a scrappy little mutt, and a whole lot of silence. I spent most of the day doing chores and reading. Around 6 o'clock, the sun started dipping behind the trees and everything outside turned this weird, dull blue. You know that color the world gets right before it's fully dark? Not quite night, not quite day. Just in between. That's when it started. I was upstairs in my room when I noticed headlights coming slowly down our dirt road. That road only leads to our house. Nothing else past us but trees and an old logging trail that nobody uses anymore. I figured maybe Grandma and Grandpa came back early, but when I looked closer, it wasn't their car. It was this beat-up gray sedan I didn't recognize. Old, too. One of those boxy kinds from the early 80s. It was moving super slow, like the driver was trying not to be seen, or looking for something. I got this weird feeling in my stomach. Not like panic, but just off. You know when your body tells you something's wrong before your brain catches up? I told myself it was nothing and went back to my book. But then Bean started barking. Not his normal yappy bark. This was different. Deep, panicked, like he was trying to warn me. So I headed downstairs to check it out. The lights were off except for a lamp in the living room, and everything looked normal, until I peeked out the front window. That same gray car was now parked at the edge of our driveway. The engine was still running, but the headlights were off. I could barely make out a figure in the driver's seat sitting completely still. Then I saw it. Our gate was open. That gate never stays open on its own. It creaks like crazy, and you really have to shove it to unlatch it. I had closed it earlier when I took Beans for a walk. I knew I had. I leaned in closer to the window and scanned the yard. That's when I saw him. A man was standing just inside the gate, not moving, not saying anything. Just standing there like a statue. He was tall and thin, wearing this long, dark coat. I couldn't see his face clearly because of the shadows, but I could tell he was looking up, scanning the windows of the house slowly, one by one. When his gaze reached the one I was behind, I froze. And then he saw me. For a few seconds, we just stared at each other. Me on one side of the glass, him on the other side of the yard. Then something really weird happened. His whole face changed. His mouth opened slightly like he was surprised, maybe even scared like he hadn't expected to be seen. And then just like that, he turned and bolted back to the car. I heard the tires screech as he floored it, kicking up dust down the road. He didn't even bother closing the gate. I stood there for a few seconds, heart pounding, and then ran upstairs to get Jonah. At first, he was mad I woke him up, but the second I said there was a guy at the gate and a weird car, he shot out of bed. We both ran to the window just in time to see the car disappear around the bend at the end of our road. Jonah and I stood there not saying anything, just breathing. After a minute, we locked all the doors and sat in the living room, keeping Beans close and waiting for Grandma and Grandpa to come home. When they did, about an hour later, we told them everything. They didn't believe us, said it was probably someone lost, maybe a delivery driver or someone checking GPS. Grandpa even chuckled and said, "You kids watch too many horror movies." But here's the thing, they don't know what we found the next morning. Jonah and I went out to check the gate, and sure enough, it was wide open. But that wasn't the scary part. The scary part was what we found in the mud right inside the fence. Footprints, bare footprints. Whoever that man was, he wasn't wearing shoes, and they weren't normal footprints either. The toes were way too long, like wrong, almost claw-like. I wanted to believe they were just smudged or distorted, but I know what I saw. 3 days later, I heard something at school that made my stomach turn. My friend Lily said her cousin, who lives a few towns over, had a break-in that same Saturday night. Someone had tried to force their way into her grandparents' farmhouse. No one was hurt, but they'd caught a glimpse of the person on a security camera. Guess what kind of car he was driving? A gray sedan. Every night since then, I lock every single door and window, even in the daytime. Sometimes I swear I hear footsteps on the porch. Not the wind. Footsteps. Like someone's just outside waiting. And every time Bean starts barking at the door or stares into the trees, I get that feeling in my gut again. The feeling that someone's still out there, watching, waiting. Alright, so picture this. It's 2023 and I'm 28, living in this creaky old rental house in a town called Ashpine, way out in the sticks of Pennsylvania. Not much around, but woods, fog, and roads that disappear into trees. I moved in with my cousin, Lily, and her baby daughter, Rosie, after things got rough for her post-divorce. Lily and I grew up close like siblings, so it just felt right to be there for her when she needed help. The house we found was kind of a miracle, honestly. Our landlord said it had just been renovated and was desperate to rent it out, $150 a month. For a whole 2-story house with a wraparound porch? Yeah, we were suspicious, but broke, so we jumped on it. The house sat near the edge of town, practically swallowed by trees. It looked charming in a worn-down way, like something out of an old photo album. But inside, it had this weird feel, cold, no matter how high we turned up the heat. And quiet, like unnaturally quiet. Even our footsteps felt muffled. At first, things were fine. Rosie was adjusting, Lily was getting back on her feet, and our 2 dogs, Murphy and Luna, seemed to love the space. I had my own room in the finished basement, and Lily and Rosie took the upstairs. But about a month in, things started to get weird. It was a Tuesday night, and Lily and I were on the couch watching some dumb reality show, while Rosie slept upstairs. Both dogs were curled up on the rug. Out of nowhere, they both sat up straight, ears perked, eyes locked on the ceiling. Then came this deep growl from Luna, low and guttural, not like her at all. Murphy followed, his hackles raised, teeth showing. They weren't looking toward the door like they heard someone outside. No, this was aimed directly up, like something was in the room above us. Lily muted the TV, and we both sat there, frozen. Then we heard it, a heavy thud like a piece of furniture tipping over upstairs. I ran up to check, expecting to see something fallen in Rosie's room, but everything was in its place. Toys neatly in the bin, diapers stacked, rocking chair still gently swaying like someone had just gotten up from it. My heart skipped. I checked Lily's room too. Nothing. No mess. No broken objects. It was like that loud noise never happened. I came back down, still trying to shake off the weirdness, when someone pounded on the front door. Not a knock, a full-on slam. So loud it shook the hallway mirror. The dogs went berserk, barking like mad. Lily grabbed Rosie, panicked, and rushed upstairs. I ran to the door, looked through the peephole, and there was nothing, just the empty front yard and the road beyond, slick from rain. When I opened the door, cold air hit my face, but the porch was completely empty. We tried to brush it off as a weird night. Maybe a branch fell upstairs. Maybe some animal ran across the roof. But that didn't explain the pounding at the door or the dog's reaction. 3 nights later, Friday, I got home from work, exhausted. We were having dinner in the living room again, and everything seemed normal. Then, out of nowhere, Murphy growled. Not a warning growl, but a low, trembling sound like he was afraid. Luna stood beside him, staring at the basement door, my door. At the same time, little Rosie looked at the door too, then smiled. She started babbling and waving like someone was standing there. Lily and I both laughed, kind of nervously, and joked about Rosie having imaginary friends already. But inside, I felt a knot forming in my gut. Then the basement door flew open, slammed against the wall so hard that it left a dent. I didn't even have time to move. The door stayed open for half a second, then slammed shut just as hard. The dogs barked, Rosie started crying, and Lily screamed and bolted upstairs. We didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I was downstairs alone watching TV when the dogs started barking again, this time toward the side of the house. I peeked through the blinds and saw a man standing on the side porch. He looked like he stepped straight out of a black and white movie. Brown suit, matching hat, shiny black shoes. He was pale, like almost gray, and didn't move, just stood. There facing the house, hands at his sides like he was waiting for someone. He didn't knock, didn't say a word, just stood there staring. I didn't go out there. I waited until he left. But I couldn't shake the image of him from my head. After that, things escalated. We started hearing things at night. Footsteps upstairs when no one was up there, whispering near the windows. Knocks on the walls from inside the house. Doors opening on their own. Cold spots in random rooms. Then came Monday. I pulled into the driveway after work, and there he was again. The same man. Same suit. Same hat. Same pale, lifeless skin. I felt sick, but I forced myself to get out of the car. I walked right up to him. "Hey, what do you want?" I asked. No response. "Look, you can't just hang around here like this. Do you need help?" Still nothing. Finally, I got frustrated and said, "If you don't leave, I'm calling the cops." That's when he looked at me. His eyes were the worst part. Ice blue, bloodshot, with deep purple bags underneath. He didn't blink, didn't speak, just stared at me like he was looking through me. Then he turned and walked off the porch toward the backyard. I ran after him, but when I turned the corner, he was gone. Vanished. Like he was never there at all. I rushed inside and told Lily. She got pale. She said the dogs had been going nuts for over 30 minutes before I got home, barking and pacing around the windows. She hadn't seen anyone outside, but now she wasn't so sure. I didn't sleep that night, and the next morning I woke up from the most vivid nightmare I've ever had. In the dream, he was on the porch again, staring through the window. Then, suddenly, he was in my room. Same blank stare, just watching. When I woke up for real, I was drenched in sweat and shaking. I cried. Couldn't explain why, just this wave of fear I couldn't stop. Ever since then, I see him everywhere. Not physically, but in flashes, reflections, windows, shadows. I'll glance across the street and swear he's behind a tree. Sometimes I'll be talking to someone, at work, and for a split second their eyes look just like his. I've asked around the neighborhood, shown people sketches. No one has seen him. Not one single person. Except for the dogs. They still growl at nothing. Still bark at empty hallways. And Rosie? She still babbles at the air. Smiles. Waves. Like she sees someone. Like she's not alone. And now, I'm starting to wonder if any of us are. So let me tell you about something strange that happened when I was a kid, something that still creeps me out to this day. Back in 2009, when I was 12, my aunt and I moved into this weird old rental house on the edge of a small town called Mill Hollow. The house was ancient, built sometime in the 1920s. It was the kind of place with cracked windows, creaky floors, and wallpaper that looked like it hadn't been changed in 100 years. We were only supposed to be there for 6 months while my aunt's new job got sorted out, but even that felt like too long. From the outside, the house looked tired. The paint was peeling and the porch sagged like it just gave up holding itself together. But it was cheap and we didn't have a lot of options, so we took it. Right from the first night, I knew something wasn't right. It wasn't just that the place was old. It had a weird feeling to it. You know that uneasy sense you get when you feel like someone's watching you even when you're alone? That feeling never really went away the whole time we were there. My room was upstairs, across from this tiny bathroom with flickering lights. My aunt's room was downstairs. The staircase that led up to my room was narrow and weirdly steep, like it felt like it wanted you to trip. And I did, a lot. At least 5 or 6 times that summer I slipped or stumbled for no good reason. Anyway, that first night I had trouble falling asleep. It was hot out. July. But my room still felt cold, like there was a draft coming from somewhere I couldn't find. I curled up under the blanket trying to ignore it, but then I started hearing footsteps on the stairs. At first I figured it was my aunt going up and down, but the thing was the footsteps kept going. Up, down, over and over. The boards groaned with each step. Clunk, creak, clunk. For hours. The next morning I didn't say anything about it, but while we were eating cereal, my aunt suddenly asked, "Were you pacing around last night?" I nearly dropped my spoon. "No," I said. "I thought that was you." She raised an eyebrow but didn't say much after that. Just muttered something like, "Weird," and kept eating. Things only got stranger after that. A few days later I was home alone. It was early afternoon and my aunt had gone to work. I decided to take a quick shower, but before I stepped in, I turned on the little TV in my room. The house felt too quiet, and I didn't like it. With the TV on, it felt a little less lonely. When I got out of the shower, I immediately noticed something was off. I could hear voices upstairs, faint but definitely there. Like someone had turned on the TV in my aunt's room, but I knew she wasn't home. I dried off and crept toward the noise. Her door was closed, but the sound was coming from inside. When I opened it, the TV was on. Loud, static, and some talk show playing. I turned it off quickly, trying to convince myself she must have left it on by mistake earlier. But as I went back to my room, I realized something even weirder. My TV, the one I had turned on before my shower, was now off. I didn't turn it off. Trying not to panic, I went downstairs. That's when I saw that the TV in the living room was also on, full volume. The same show from upstairs. I ran over and shut it off, heart pounding. I stood there for a minute, staring at the blank screen, trying to come up with a logical explanation. Power surge? Old wiring? But nothing really made sense. TVs don't just turn on and off like that. Not all by themselves. Things kept happening. I started hearing my aunt calling my name from other rooms. But when I'd go look, she wouldn't be there. A few times I even heard her say something like, "Come here," or "I need help," in this soft, urgent tone. But she'd be outside watering plants or out running errands. One time I even heard her humming a tune upstairs while I was in the kitchen. When I asked her about it later, she looked confused and said she hadn't been home at all that day. The worst part? Every time I heard her voice, it sounded exactly like her. Not kind of like her, exactly like her. Like someone, or something, was copying her voice perfectly. I tried to ignore it all. Told myself I was tired or imagining things, or maybe just letting the weird old house get to me. But then came the dreams. I started dreaming about the house over and over again. Always the same kind of dream. In the dream, I'm back in the house, but it's not quite the same. Everything looks darker, older, like it's rotting from the inside. The paint is peeling worse, the lights don't work, and the whole place feels like it's breathing, like it's alive. The doors slam open, by themselves, like someone's behind them, but when I check, no one's there. I can hear this old piano playing somewhere, slow, eerie notes. The same melody every time. I've never been able to figure out what song it is. I never see the piano, but I always hear it. And then there are the stairs. In my dream, I keep trying to go upstairs, but the staircase stretches on and on like it never ends. The higher I go, the more twisted and narrow the steps get, until it feels like I'm crawling through a tunnel. Sometimes I hear whispering behind me, like someone's following close behind. But when I turn around, there's nothing. That dream has happened at least 10 times in the past few weeks. It's always the same. And I always wake up just before I reach the top of the stairs. Sometimes I wake up sweating, my heart racing, feeling like I never left that house at all. We moved out in December of that year. My aunt got a new job in a different city, and we never talked about the house again. It was like we both wanted to pretend it never happened, but I think about it all the time. I still wonder what was really going on in that house. Was it haunted? Was something trying to scare us, or maybe was it trying to get us to stay? Whatever it was, I'm just glad we left. But sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear those same footsteps in my dreams. Up, down, up, down. And once, I thought I heard someone whisper my name, but I was alone. We moved into the new place at the end of summer, early August of 1996. It was a big old farmhouse just outside a small town called Pine Hollow. Wide fields, thick woods along the back, and the kind of silence you only get miles away from the highway. My wife Lily and I had been dreaming of something like this for years. A place where our kids could grow up barefoot in the grass and fall asleep to crickets instead of sirens. From the moment we pulled up, I felt something off, but Lily fell in love instantly. She kept saying how peaceful it was, how the air smelled sweeter. And she was right in a way. 5 acres of land, a big red barn, a white porch that wrapped around the front. It looked like something off a postcard. We didn't ask too many questions. The price was good, the place was solid, and we were just so ready to start fresh. The first few weeks were perfect. We unpacked slow, spent evenings on the porch and got to know the land. Our kids, Maddie and Sam, ran wild through the fields. Everything felt like it was falling into place. Until I met Mr. Carver. He lived across the gravel road just past the row of dying maple trees. Said he was 84, but I swear he didn't look a day over 60. He had this wiry strength about him. Sharp eyes, steady hands, always fixing something in his yard. One day I waved from our mailbox and crossed over to introduce myself. That's when things started to turn. Carver shook my hand, firm grip, and asked if we were enjoying the house. I said we were, that it felt like home already. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Keep your grass trimmed," he said. "Every 5 days. No more, no less." I laughed, thought he was joking, but his face stayed stone serious. I told him the back part of our land was for hay, and we only mowed it when we baled. He didn't respond, just stared. Then he looked past me toward the house and added, "If you ever need anything, best to send your wife. Don't come to my place yourself." Before I could ask what he meant, he tilted his head and said something that made my skin crawl. She ought to let her hair grow out. She'd look more proper, more motherly. I smiled through my teeth and walked away, told myself he was just old-fashioned. People get strange as they age, especially out in the country. A week later, his niece Bonnie stopped by. She lived 2 doors down and brought over some cookies, said she wanted to welcome us properly. She invited Lily over for tea, and they hit it off at first. Bonnie was quiet, kind, always tending to her garden. Her backyard was filled with perfect rows of vegetables and these huge, unnatural-looking sunflowers that always seemed to face the house instead of the sun. One day, Lily went over to visit. They chatted in the kitchen while Bonnie made tea. When Bonnie stepped into the other room to take a phone call, Lily wandered down the hallway. She said she wasn't snooping, just curious. The hall ended at a heavy-looking door, new wood, shiny bolts, and 3 big metal locks. Everything else in the house was soft and old, worn in like a favorite sweater. But that door looked like it had been installed yesterday. Lily said she felt drawn to it, and when she leaned in, she saw scratch marks all around the frame, deep ones, like someone or something had tried to claw their way out. Before she could get closer, Bonnie came back and practically leapt between her and the hallway. "Oh, that?" she said, smiling too wide. "Just the old storage room. You know how basements are, damp. Not really safe to go down there." That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about those scratch marks. She didn't want to talk about it in front of the kids, so we waited until they were asleep, then sat on the porch and whispered like we were kids again. The next morning, she passed by Bonnie's place on her walk and noticed one of those tiny basement windows, the kind that barely sits above ground. On the inside of the glass was a handprint, small, clear, pressed right against the glass like someone was inside. Reaching out, we tried to brush it off, told ourselves it could have been anything, a kid maybe, cleaning smudge. But it hadn't rained. There was no dust or dirt. And that handprint? It was fresh. Too fresh. A few nights later, I was out in the barn checking on the tools when I saw tire tracks that didn't belong to us. They cut straight across our field. We hadn't had visitors. Nobody fessed up to being there. When I checked our security cameras, every bit of footage from that night had been wiped, not corrupted, erased, like someone had known exactly what they were doing. And then came the moment that changed everything. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Lily was out back hanging laundry when she said she felt it. That strange, prickling sense you get when you know you're not alone. She turned, and there he was, Mr. Carver, just standing at the edge of the trees. He didn't move, didn't wave, just stared at her for what felt like forever. Then finally, He spoke. Don't dig there. He pointed to a spot near the tree line, then turned around and walked away, calm as anything, like he hadn't just dropped a horror movie line in real life. Lily told me that night, and we argued about it. I said we should let it go, but she couldn't. Something in her needed to know. The next afternoon, after I left for work and the kids were napping, she grabbed a shovel and went out to the spot. The ground was soft, like it had been disturbed not long ago. Just a few inches down, she hit something metal. It was a rusted box, heavy, with a latch that barely held. She pried it open. Inside were old black and white photographs, dozens of them. Families standing out front of our house. Different people, different years. Some looked like the 40s, others more recent. All worn, curled at the corners, but in every single one, tucked to the edge of the frame, was Mr. Carver. Always the same age, always standing just behind the others, watching. That night, we didn't sleep. The next morning, Lily marched over to Carver's place. She knocked hard, holding one of the photos in her hand, but it wasn't him who opened the door. It was his wife, Ruth. She looked confused at first, then pale. Lily said, "I need to talk to your husband." Ruth blinked a few times and shook her head. "You must be mistaken," she said quietly. "Walter died 3 years ago. Heart attack. Right out there in the driveway." Lily didn't speak, just stared. Ruth looked past her toward our house. Her voice dropped even lower. "You should be careful," she said. "That house, it remembers things." We moved out a month later. Never told the kids why. Just said the farm wasn't working out. But every now and then, when the wind's just right, I swear I can still hear a voice in my dreams. A calm, old voice whispering, "From the trees, don't dig there, and I don't, not ever again."